Yes, ma'am. Shall we start, ma'am?
Yes, sir.
Dear members, good evening all. Welcome to today's seminar on GST. Guntur Branch of SIRC of ICA is conducting seminar on GST from today 13th June to 18th June.
Recording in
GST
progress.
Legal Week. Good evening to Sri CA Mupal Subbarao Garu, Chief Guest of the today's session, and SIRC member from our Guntur region, Guntur, and our home branch member, past chairman of Guntur branch. And welcome to today's speaker, Sri CA Venu Gopal Garu. And good evening to today's attendees of this GST seminar, and welcome to Guntur Branch of SIRC of ICA.
Hello. 794.
Dear members, we are conducting GST seminar. Today's topic is assessment and audit under GST. So, Sri CA Venugopal Garu will take the session on this assessment and audit under GST. So, with this brief introduction, I am handing over the proceedings to Guntur Branch of SIRC of ICA Chairman Sri Vangala Bhargavi Garu. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you, Amarnath sir. Good evening, dear members. First of all, I request the Guntur branch to mute the remaining people except the speaker, SIRC member, and myself. Yes, sir. So, good evening, dear members. Welcome to this 6 days legal week in GST, right from assessment and audit under GST up to advanced rulings and all. So, as we all know, we are going to complete 5 years for GST by 1st July 2022. So we have been saying that GST is a baby, GST is just born baby. I think after this July 1st, 2022, it is no more a baby. It is a baby that is growing up. But still, every one of us having some or the other doubts in every aspect, right from classification, right from authority for advanced ruling, whatever it is. The government is taking up steps in clarifying all these aspects. And in one of us office, we are receiving a notice every day or every other day from GST department, be it a state GST or central GST. So we all know that the legality of this GST has been increasing, and every one of us, including me, is having very less knowledge or nil knowledge, we can say, I can say, in how to handle these legal issues. We still have doubts in GSTR 9 and 9C. We still have doubts, we should admit that. So on behalf of all our members, we Guntur branch has thought that why don't we take up a 6 days legal week which covers every aspects, the penalties, offences, etc. Okay, for that we have chosen the best speakers in the respective fields, that is they are the best in GST, but we have given one topic to each speaker. First of all, I would like to thank CA Venugopal sir from Bangalore for readily accepting our invitation and to take up the session. Thank you so much, Venugopal sir. welcome to Guntur Branch on behalf of our branch.
Thank you,
So,
madam.
this is the first time you are visiting Guntur Branch. Of course, this time virtually, but in future you should please come to Guntur.
Surely, madam.
And I also welcome today's chief guest, CA Muppala Subbarao sir, SIRC member, ex officio of Guntur Branch. Subbarao sir, welcome sir.
Thank you.
And all other members, please do attend all the days programs, 6 days continuously, because attending for one day and skipping for the next day won't give you best results. As I know, many of us are into GST practice, or at least we have started practice, because the GST practice, the replying to notices, filing of appeals, etc. has become a big deal now comparative to income tax. So it is the right time and high time to take the GST seriously. So thank you all for joining, and please continue the session continuously. Before we going forward, I request Guntur Branch to play a motto song, Institute motto song, please.
येष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति येष सुप्तेषु जाग्रति कामं 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 कामपुरुषो पुरुषो निर्मिमाणः निर्मिमाणः तदेव शुक्रं तद्ब्रह्मा तद्ब्रह्मा तदेवामृतमुच्यते तस्मिन् लोकः शतः सर्वे तदूनात्यपि कश्चन एतद्द्वैता 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 एतद्द्वैता.
Thank you, members. Now I request today's chief guest, SIRC member, ex officio Guntur Branch, CA Mohan Subbarao sir, to take opening remarks. Sir.
Thank you, Bhargavi. Good evening, Chairperson Bhargavi, Secretary Amarnath, and other managing committee members. Today's speaker Venu Gopal garu from Bangalore. A very good evening to all of you. First, I would like to appreciate the efforts made by Guntur Branch for organizing Legal Week on Indirect Taxes and GST with eminent speakers from different places on different topics. The topics which are going to deal these weekdays are assessment and audit under GST, demands and recovery, 1 day, offences and penalties, 1 day, appeals and revision, search and seizure and arrest under GST, advance ruling sections under GST. These 6 days, we are going to deal with all the GST topics, important topics. I hope our Guntur Branch members will be enriched with good knowledge and command on GST after completion of this week. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Subbarao sir. Now I request CA Naresh, MC member Guntur Branch, to give a brief profile of CA Venugopal sir. Over to you, Naresh sir. Sir, please unmute yourself.
CA Venugopal Ji is founder partner in MS Venu and Vinay Chartered Accountant since 2002. He secured All India 45th rank in CA Final. He is also certified information systems auditor. He has also completed various other certificate courses from ICA, namely DISA, course on business valuation, course on internal audit, course on fraud detection and forensic accounting. He also completed 1-year course from IAM on data analysis and business intelligence. He is an active speaker at ICA on GST, especially on technology and its implementation challenges. He has authored various industry-specific handbooks on GST. He has contributed to the technical guide on GST audit released by the ICA and other publication materials. He conducts workshops on filing returns with ease use of automation. He has also developed a lot of Excel-based free utilities on GST like JSON Reader, creating JSON files, GST and Validator, composition versus regular benefit analysis, GST Impact Trader, real estate project switch decision analysis, GST audit working paper tool, etc. He is a GST faculty for ICA and conducted various workshops and webinars. He played an active role in drafting and designing of e-invoice along with GST and NIC. He has conducted various workshops for corporates on use of technology, improve efficiency at work using Excel, building automated reports from accounting and financial applications. He was behind in development and managing of cloud applications like TaxSmile, Insta Financials, and others. With this brief introduction, I introduce today's speaker, CA Gopal ji, to the today's session.
Thank you, Naresh sir. So Guntur Branch is happy to have such a knowledgeable, energetic, and continuous learner on this session. Sir, over to you. The stage is yours.
Thank you, madam. Firstly, I should appreciate the efforts taken by Guntur Branch Chairman Bhargavi Madam for conceptualizing a litigative refresher course and making it as a GST legal week. And I'm very happy that I am the opening batsman. Just on a lighter note, in the IPL, some of the opening batsmen failed, but don't worry. So you will not have that experience today. And all the office bearers in terms of timely coordinating and reminding. So thank you all for the session. And Andariki Namaskaram. So let us start the session. As Madam said rightly, that do not treat this as the only session and stop attending the other sessions. In fact, today's session is going to be a foundation for all the other legal topics that are going to come. You should also speak and ask the other faculty members about other likely litigations that are going to come up. Audit and assessments is the order of the day. If at all, okay, 3 years back, 2 years back, if we are doing any GST session ante, more of the sessions would be returns ela file cheyali, reconcile avakapothe em cheyali, input tax credit enti, supply lo em ostundi, reverse charge enti. It was all more of the act procedural related sessions. Like Ippudu, if you see, you will not find someone conducting a session, input tax credit ante enti GST law. Adi evariki apply avutundi. Alanti basic, that has become, by the way, has become a basic topic. So we are now not discussing any of those topics because we have crossed 5 years, as Madam said. Though theoretically 5 years for the GST, it is 2 years before 1st July 2017 where we had the first model draft, second model draft. Then in March 2017, whatever the current act which we were seeing, that act got released and tabled to the public for discussion. So even in our ICA publication was there much before this came up, because on the model draft law allowed. So there was sufficient preparations that have happened. Now, outcome of all these preparations and everything is place where now we have come for audit and assessments. So today I would be covering from section 59 up until 65, all the procedures of the audits and assessments. So just to start with, what is an assessment? Assessment ante enti? Income tax loan assessments unnai, other places loan assessments unnai. Assessment ante enti? Okay. Before I further deliberate, one request to the host, just in case if we are always in technology era, so technology problems can come up. If my voice is not audible or the PPT is not visible, I request the chairman or someone to make a announcement or a call so that I'll be back.
Sure, sir.
So assessment and in a general way, if we have handled income tax assessment. Assessment and what would be your answer? And feel free to put your answers in the chat and questions also in the chat. So if I have to ask you a question, me prakaram assessment ante enti? What will you say? A difficult question. So under GST, and a very interesting answer, if you see the GST 211 of the Act talks about assessment, means determination of tax liability. And it includes self-assessment, reassessment, provisional assessment, summary assessment, and bed judgment. But predominantly, what is the assessment? Assessment and determination of the tax liability. If one have to really look at Form GSTR 9C, now where we are conducting an audit, of course, though it is now made into self-audit, look at the purpose of it. The purpose is we have to determine the correct tax liability. And in a layman language or a common businessman, if you ask him a question, okay, GST liability ante వాళ్ళ మైండ్ లో ఏముంటుంది, ఈ మంత్ 20th నేను 3B ఫైల్ చేసేటప్పుడు ఎంత ట్యాక్స్ కట్టాలి, that will be there in their back of their mind as the tax liability. But actually all taxpayers, they are honorary tax collectors. The government of India has given a honorary job for them to collect the tax. So no businessman is paying tax from their pocket. From the sales they are collecting from their customers and they are paying it. So but a layman as a businessman, వాళ్ళ ఉద్దేశంలో tax అంటే ప్రతి నెల నేను 20వ తారీఖు ఫైల్ చేసేటప్పుడు ఎంత పే చేస్తానో, that will be there as their cash flow, and that will determine whether I'm filing the return on 20th evening or 17th or 18th. Now this tax liability, if I have to determine, and I will change this word to a layman language to an English, or if I have to give a software programmer to develop an application, the tax liability which we are talking is a cash that is paid month on month. How is it derived? We say, I will say gross tax liability less input tax credit. And again, gross tax liability, if I have to convert mathematically, I will say turnover multiplied by rate of tax. Is it all the turnover that we talk? Again, looking at mathematically, gross turnover less exemptions is the taxable turnover. That is what we are talking. And the tax rate is various tax rates. That's where we are determining the gross liability. And when we talk about input tax credit, we are only talking about eligible input tax credit. Look at the 9C form, how beautifully they have developed. When they have developed, they looked at the gross tax liability, which is there in the table, gross turnover, which is there in the table 5. And if it is not matching with the expected value that should be coming in your annual returns, which is you report it in 6. But what is more important is the taxable turnover. So if you have to derive taxable turnover, you have to carve out exemptions. That's where you report exemptions in table 7 and you derive the taxable turnover. And if it's not matching, you report it in 8 with the reasons. But what is important is the tax liability. You multiply this turnover with the rate of tax in your table 9. And if it's not matching, you give explanation in table 10. And if there is a liability that is arising out of the turnover side, we report it in table 11. Input tax credit, we look at eligibility. There is 2 reconciliations, is whether it is recorded in the books or not in table 12, and what is gross availed, gross eligible in table 14. So the form itself, all the forms have been designed from this word determination of tax liability. So it is very much important that one has to understand what is the tax liability. And there are various types of assessments. There are some by the taxpayers, which is self-assessment, and there are some by the tax authorities from section 60 to 64. So let's quickly go over. So wherever the topic is not required in detail, I will be skipping. feel free to ask questions. Madhyalo ekkadana doubt unte interrupt cheyandi. You can put your questions in the chat. Absolutely no issue. I will manage the time. And trust me that because 7 o'clock, I'll leave you for the other activities also. Let's start with self-assessment. Now, self-assessment ante basically we are assessing ourselves. Again, fundamental question to all of you, which I would request your answer from yes or no in the chat. And in most of my sessions, I'll ask some questions, request participants to participate. Otherwise, I don't even know how you are is my voice audible clearly or not. Self-assessment, the question to you is, you are filing your returns every month. Section 37 GSTR1, Section 39 GSTR3B. Is filing of your GSTR1 and 3B, is it a self-assessment? Answer could be yes or a no. If you feel as yes, put it as yes in the chat. If it is no, put it as no in the chat. And why I'm presuming as yes? So otherwise, I might be thinking you're asking one more question to me. So 2 people responded as yes. Okay. So question is, the returns that you are filing month over month, is it self-assessment? So I'm muting the participants. Please keep yourself. Yeah. Okay. So we have received a couple of answers as yes. Others might be saying yes to yourself. That's fine. Now, the Act says every registered person shall self-assess the tax payable and furnish a return for each tax period as specified under Section 39, which is your GSTR 3B. 3 is any or not there. Now, the point that you have to ask yourself, am I self-declaring, which is there in my 3B, is it equivalent to your self-assessment? Let us look at a scenario. My turnover is 1 crore and the tax liability is 18 lakhs. GSTR1, which is showing as 1 crore and turnover and liability 18 lakhs. While I am filing in my GSTR3B, I reported my turnover as 1 lakh and the tax liability as 18,000. I have declared a value. Now, is the declaration which I have given, which is wrong, is it a self-assessment? A question to ponder, that is the self-declaration, would it amount to self-assessment? We'll come to and conclusive answers at the later. But if I make a mistake, knowingly, unknowingly, erroneously, a wrong number is given, would that be called as self-assessment? Yeah. In the Act, if you notice, we have all the types of assessments. We have all the types of assessment, like the assessment which I have mentioned includes a self-assessment. That is what we have seen here. Provisional, summary, best judgment. You will find all the answers here. But the word assessment included reassessment. The definition of reassessment is not given anywhere, and there is nothing called reassessment. Now, a point for you to look at is a reassessment applicable to everywhere? The answer is yes. While filing your returns, you have identified some mistakes. How do you correct that? You have an opportunity to amend your GSTR1. If you have short disclosed your liability in your 3B going by circular 26, you will add it as a liability in the next period. So your 3B, it is both assessment and self-assessment also. And who has to furnish is a registered person. By the way, whenever you are reading the Act, manam Act chadutunnappudu, more importantly, we have to understand to whom it is applicable. Even when we are reading the assessment, other sections, I will be telling, but each section is applicable to a category of person. Like when you go to section 9, it will be applicable to a taxable person. Section 35, books of accounts, it will be applicable to a registered person. When a penalty is levied under say section 130, it is applicable to person. సో మనం యాక్ట్ చదివేటప్పుడు ఆ సెక్షన్ ఎవరికి అప్లికబుల్ అవుతుంది అన్నది కూడా వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్. వీ హ్యావ్ రిలేటెడ్ పర్సన్, వీ హ్యావ్ ఎ డిస్టింక్ట్ పర్సన్. సో నో రీడింగ్ దట్ ఇన్ బిట్వీన్ ద లైన్స్ ఆర్ ఆల్సో వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్. Registered person ante someone who has registered under the law, whether under the obligation or voluntarily also they can register. So either they cross the threshold or voluntarily they are registered, and it will be assessed by there are other definitions which come up. Proper officer. GST law, there are various proper officers. Under GST chala proper officers untaru. When you log into the GST portal or GST services.gst.gov.in look velli, you search a taxpayer. It will give you a jurisdiction, state and center. That is one proper officer or the proper officer for you for your notice and assessments. Next, the audit which is conducted under section 65 is a different proper officer, or an inspection enforcement which happens under 67 is a different proper officer. Someone who is stopping the vehicle and levying penalty under 129 is a different proper officer. So the proper officer under GST is different to different sections. And how do I know someone who is knocking my door, he is the right proper officer or not? Circular 3 and the incidentally the notification, the number is also 3, actually defines who is the proper officer for each section. The proper officers are being defined, and they are the one who will be issuing the notices for various reasons. And written under GST, what is a written is something which is declared as a written. Again, one question to everyone. GST R1 and GST in GST Act law, every section has a forms and nomenclatures. Like assessments are under ASMT, GST returns are GSTR. So question to you, all of you, is GSTR1 a written under the Act? The question is GSTR1, is it a written under the law? It could be again yes or a no. Madhavi madam says yes. Rajesh sir says no. Ajay says yes. Others thinking what to write, or okay, anyhow the answer will come. Now GSTR1 and goods and service tax return number 1. Even though the title of that is 1, but if you read section 37, it's a statement. It was supposed to be an annexure to GSTR3. GSTR3 is written, GSTR1 and 2 is a statement. Even the new return scheme which was proposed, ANX1 and ANX2 was supposed to be an annexure. It is not a written. So GSTR1 is not a written. So now I will explain you what will be the impact if that is not a written. And valid return means something where if the self-assessed tax has been paid full, something to be make a return valid. 2117 says your self-assessed tax has been paid in full. Now here is where the question which I have asked, turnover is 1 crore, tax liability 18 lakhs. While I declared 1,18,000 in my 3B, does that make my GSTR 3B a valid return? Having disclosed 18,000 tax liability చూపించిన తర్వాత return has been filed, and we all know 3B లో కొంచెం అమౌంట్ చూపించి ట్యాక్స్ పే చేయకుండా రిటర్న్ ఫైల్ చేసే ప్రసక్తి లేదు. సో హాఫ్ పేమెంట్ ట్యాక్స్ రిటర్న్ ఫైలింగ్ కాన్సెప్ట్ లేదు. సో 3B లో లయబిలిటీ ఎంత చూపిస్తే అంత ట్యాక్స్ by input tax credit or cash I have to discharge. So the question that comes is, if I short disclose something, will it be a valid return? So again, I want you to keep the answer with you. We will explore. This is on the self-assessment. Now, some of the points is a hotel which is having restaurant and the rooms, and we know they in the rooms they have slab system, 0 to 1,000, 1 tax, 1,000 to 2.5, then 7.5. There are different rates of tax. Petrol, the petrol bunks, 99% of the items they sell is petrol, diesel, which is outside the purview. But the portion of the oils which they sell is under the purview. Now, some of them disclose the exempted turnover, some of them don't disclose the exempted turnover. Some of them disclose the taxable and non-taxable. So will it make it as a self-assessment? A UIN holders, are they SSEs? They are never subjected to tax. So that is a question to be looked at. If the self-assessment tax is not paid, now there is no concept of non-payment of tax. Though 2117 has used this statement, can I at all, is it possible to file a return without payment of tax? It is not even possible. So you can't even imagine filing a return without payment of tax. Having disclosed a value in my GSTR 1 crore, will that be deemed as a self-assessed tax? And can a penalty be levied for all this under section 73? Is the questions which over the other assessments we cover, we will be looking at. But like this, there will be many questions that will be coming. If you have any question, please put it in the chat. So GST is a self-compliant law. We call it as technology-driven law. GST law, whatever we think is the right, we will be filing it through our returns. That is why we call GST as a self-assessment law. And the prominence is given to self-assessment so much that whatever you declare is the self-assessed. Unless otherwise, an officer has a reason to believe and is asking some questions by various other things, there is no other way that you can say that, okay, your return is wrong. So whatever you are filing every month is kind of self-assessed. Every tax period you are filing, which means in a year you have completed 12 assessments by filing your 3B, and the 13th assessment by filing your annual return. Yeah. So provisional assessment, this is an area which many people wouldn't explore, have not explored, and not willing to explore, is if a taxpayer, please note, provisional assessment is if a taxpayer is unable to determine the value of the goods or rate of tax. Is it possible? Of course, there will be many situations where you still do not know whether the supply you're making is supply of goods or services, or I have entered into a contract like a derivatives, the outcome of my work basis that the recipient will determine what is the value he would want to pay me. I can enter into any of the business contracts, and at this point I am little doubtful. Then I can make a request to the proper officer giving all these reasons, saying that I would want to pay it on a provisional basis, and the officer will grant the payment to make it on a provisional basis. Of course, he will call some information to make an assessment. I would be executing a bond saying that the liability that you have arrived is what I will be paying, and the officer will be completing the assessment within 6 months. Now, please note, provisional assessment, the title itself is a provisional assessment. Just because there is a provisional assessment happened to any 1 month or any one tax period, it doesn't mean that assessment of your return has been complete. Provisional assessment is only a temporary phenomena to assess. I am unable to make a self-assessment, and you have adopted this route. Just in terms of the procedure, in fact, this is where I said entire forms have been given. Like, you'll make an application in ASMT 01, officer will call for additional information in ASMT 02, your response will be in 03, basis that the officer make a provisional order in ASMT 04, and you'll furnish a bond or a security in ASMT 05. Like, if you notice that there are forms that have been prescribed in the procedure, and basis this, the officer will finally give a notice and he will pass an order in ASMT 07. After you make the payment of the taxes, you will make an application for releasing the bond or the security. Officer will release it in ASMT 09. So very procedurally, methodologically, the forms have been designed. Sometimes you may get a notice from the officer without putting in a prescribed form. That doesn't make you can reply it in any other form. I would also expect that you should procedurally form the replies in the forms that have been specified. This is on the provisional assessments. Most important, where I would want to spend time, is on the scrutiny of returns. So section 61 of the Act, read with Rule 99, gives a power to the officer to scrutinize the returns. Now, here there is a small disconnect between what is there in the Act versus what is there in the rules. There's a small, very small disconnect. Now, that small disconnect really makes a huge impact. While the Act says, proper officer may scrutinize the returns and inform the discrepancy. The proper officer may scrutinize the returns and inform the discrepancy. Now, the words used here, the words which have been used here in section 61 is scrutinize the written and related particulars furnished by the registered person. In fact, if you have an Act, I would always suggest, whenever you are attending any session, carry an Act book with you, carry a notebook to make notes with you, right? So if you read the Act, section 61 says the proper officer may scrutinize the written and related particulars furnished by the registered person. So our registered person తను ఫర్నిష్ చేసిన రిటర్న్స్, దానికి సంబంధించబడ్డ రిలేటెడ్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ వెరిఫై చేయడానికి సెక్షన్ 61 యూజ్ చేస్తారు. అదే మనం రూల్ 99కు వెళ్తే, రూల్ 99 చెప్తుంది ద సెక్షన్ 61లో రెఫర్ చేయబడ్డ ప్రావిజన్స్ will be verified with the information available with him. అంటే ప్రాపర్ ఆఫీసర్ దగ్గర ఉన్న ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ వెరిఫికేషన్ ఆధారంగా ఏమైనా డిస్క్రిపెన్సీస్ ఉంటే, ఆ వెరిఫై చేసిన తర్వాత ఏమైనా డిస్క్రిపెన్సీస్ ఉంటే ఆ డిస్క్రిపెన్సీస్కి the proper officer will issue a notice, ASMT 10. The proper officer will issue a notice called ASMT 10. So if there are any discrepancies, so the disconnect here is information and the related particulars furnished by the registered person and the information available with the proper officer. Now, first and foremost question, the point to note, you will be getting a notice under section 61 only if there is a discrepancy in your GSTR 3B, or you can get a questions regarding your annual returns, because only those two are returns. GSTR 1 మీరు ఏప్రిల్ మాసంలో ఒక 10 లక్షలు చూపించారు, మే మంత్కి వచ్చేసరికి మీ టర్న్ ఓవర్ 1 లక్ష చూపించారు, ఎందుకు ఇంత తగ్గిపోయింది అని మీకు క్వశ్చన్ అడగకూడదు, బికాస్ ఇట్ ఇస్ స్టేట్మెంట్ ఆఫ్ ఫ్యాక్ట్ విచ్ యూ హావ్ గివెన్ అండర్ GSTR 1. కాకపోతే GSTR 1లో మీరు 10 లక్షలు చూపించారు, GSTR 1లో మీరు 1 లక్ష మాత్రమే చూపించారు, ఎందుకు డిఫరెన్స్ ఉంది అన్న క్వశ్చన్ అడగొచ్చు. సో 3B రెలవెంట్ క్వశ్చన్ అడగొచ్చు. అడిగేటప్పుడు నేను ఫర్నిష్ చేసిన GSTR 1 బేసిస్ లో అడుగుతారు. నా రూల్ 99 ప్రకారం వాళ్ళ దగ్గర ఉన్న ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ప్రకారం కూడా అడుగుతారు. వాళ్ళ దగ్గర ఏం అడిషనల్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఉంది? 2A ఉంది, 2B ఉంది. నా మీరు చెప్పొచ్చు 2A 2B నాకు సంబంధించింది కాదు, వేరే అదర్ రిజిస్టర్డ్ పర్సన్ ఫర్నిష్ చేసింది, సో దాని ఆధారంగా నన్ను అడగడానికి వాడెవరు, వాడికి అధికారం ఏముంది అని మీరు డౌట్ రావచ్చు. బట్ రూల్ 99 దిట్ గివ్స్ ది పవర్ దట్ ఆఫీసర్ దగ్గర ఉన్న ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ యూస్ చేసుకొని he will ask any question, he will be asking the question. ప్రిడామినెంట్ గా 3B లో ఉన్న లయబిలిటీ ఈ ఇన్వాయిస్ లో ఉన్న లయబిలిటీ ఆర్ ఈవే బిల్ లో మీరు చూపించారు, ఈవే బిల్ లో ఉంది 3B లో లేదు, ఈ ఇన్వాయిస్ లో ఉంది 3B లో లేదు, R1 లో ఉంది 3B లో లేదు. సో ఇలాంటి డిస్క్రిపెన్సీస్ మీద క్వశ్చన్ అడగొచ్చు. 2A లో లేదు, మీరు ఐటీసీ తీసుకున్నారు. 2B లో ఇనెలిజిబుల్ అని చూపిస్తుంది, మీరు 4D లో రిపోర్ట్ చేయాలి 3B లో, బట్ మీరు 4A5 లో రిపోర్ట్ చేశారు. ఇలాంటి క్వశ్చన్స్ అడగొచ్చు. మీరు యాన్యువల్ రిటర్న్స్ లో మీరు ఒక వాల్యూ అడాప్ట్ చేశారు, బట్ యాన్యువల్ రిటర్న్స్ లో ఉన్న వాల్యూ మీకు బుక్స్ తో మ్యాచ్ అవ్వట్లేదు. ఓకే, 1, 2A, 2B అర్థం చేసుకుంటాను, ఆర్ ఈ ఇన్వాయిస్ అర్థం చేసుకుంటాను. బుక్స్ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ తన దగ్గర ఎక్కడుంది? నౌ టుడే ద ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఇన్ ఎ కార్పొరేట్ వరల్డ్ ఈజ్ అవైలబుల్. ఎంసీఏ డేటాలో ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఉంది, మీరు ఫర్నిష్ చేసిన ఫినాన్షియల్ స్టేట్మెంట్ ఎంసీఏలో ఉంది, అక్కడ నుంచి తీసుకోవచ్చా? 26 AS లో ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ ఉంది. ఇప్పుడు మీరు లాగిన్ అయితే మీ 26 AS పోర్టల్లో మీ 3B టర్న్ ఓవర్ కనపడుతుంది. జిఎస్టీలో లాగిన్ అయితే మీకు 26 AS లో ఏముందో కనపడుతుంది. ఆ ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ బేసిస్ మీద కూడా నోటీస్ ఇవ్వచ్చు అని మీరు అడగొచ్చు. రూల్ 99 ప్రకారము ఎస్, హీ కెన్ ఇష్యూ ది notice. Okay, there is a request to speak in English. Surely, ma'am, I would be strict to only English, no problem. So, point is, rather than arguing whether the proper officer has a jurisdiction to raise a question beyond the information furnished by me, I would say that you can only raise a question whether if the notice is not on 3B or 9, if the notice on something else, you can raise a question. Next, the important other point is, once you get a notice under ASMT 10, you got to give a reply within 30 days. You got to give a reply within 30 days. And if the reply is proper and he is happy, he will close the case by issuing ASMT 12. Else, he will be referring this matter for further adjudication. So, under legal proceedings, we should know assessment and adjudication. So, okay, officer is concluding something, then adjudicating is you are finalizing the tax liability. So, it is kind of your article is doing the audit and you are finalizing the audit report, something like that. So, if the officer is satisfied, well and good. If the officer is not satisfied, then he will either request the another officer to conduct an audit under 65, or a special audit under 66, or inspection under 67. Or if everything is apparent, he may proceed to determine the tax and recover that by serving a notice under 73 or 74. In fact, tomorrow, I guess, is the discussion on section 73 and 74. GST practice చేస్తున్నారు అంటే ఈ రెండు సెక్షన్లు ఖచ్చితంగా తెలిసి ఉండాలి. Of course, when I say practice, I'm not saying that you are full time into GST, but GST లో మీకు డిమాండ్ వచ్చిందంటే ఏ సెక్షన్ లో డిమాండ్ వచ్చింది, ఎందుకు వచ్చింది, ఆరిజినేటింగ్ సెక్షన్ ఏ సెక్షన్ నుంచి మీకు వచ్చింది అన్నది కూడా important. You should be knowing these two very importantly. If the reply is proper, if the officer is okay with it, then he will issue an order under ASMT 12. Honestly, I have responded so many notices, at least I'll not say in hundreds, but at least around 60-70 ASMT 10s have been responded. Not even a single ASMT 12 has been issued. Now you may ask, how will I know my response has been accepted or not? The only way you will know is if the officer is not initiating further. You may ask, how will I know what is the officer choosing next course of action? Don't worry, if there is a next course of action, you will get an automatically notice from that respective portions, the next course of action, a notice will be coming. That is on section 61, a very important section. So 59 self-assessment, 61 is scrutiny of returns. Two important sections one should be knowing under GST. Any questions to anyone so far? Any questions? Maybe you would. You can raise the hand, we can unmute, or you can put it in the chat. Else we'll continue. All right. Let's move to the next best judgment assessment. So, couple of things on a casual note. This is going to be a worst judgment assessment, but the basis of the best judgment assessment will give you so much confidence in life. It will definitely give you, if you read it positively, so much confidence in life. Like if you open your spam box of your Gmail, now someone will be say you won $13 million in KBC, or someone will be writing to you that okay, some shipment from Russia is struck and it is wanting to come, and can you help me in releasing? All these things you will give you, saying that okay, there are so many people out there wanting to reward you so much. That's like this. So officer thinks that your turnover is not doubling, but at least it is increasing by 14% every month over month, and that's how he makes the assessments. Yeah, let's understand. There are two things under a best judgment assessment. Section 62, assessment of non-filers. Assessment of non-filers. So someone who is registered under the law, but he is failing to furnish the return. He is failing to furnish the return even after giving a notice. I have given a notice. He has failed to furnish a notice, reply, and file the returns. Then the proper officer bases the information available to him, and to the best of his judgment, he will proceed to assess the liability. He will be proceeding to assess the liability. And the form that he will be giving you is ASMT 13. If you remember, under 61, we closed at ASMT 13. Like under 60, we closed at ASMT 9. So it is all procedurally, serially drafted. So if this information is asked and notice is served and you are not done, the officer with the available information with him, what is the information? Of course, best judgment, they will say that with the available information. If nothing is available, then they say, okay, there is an inflation which is happening, so every month you will be doing higher turnover. For all practical reasons, you would have shut the business, whatever, but he will be passing and he will be giving you a notice under ASMT 13. However, he will give you an assessment order within 5 years from the due date of the annual return for the financial year for which the taxes have not been paid. So for the finalizing the order, he has time. The only thing which you should be very much aware, or which you should be advising your clients, is if you get a best judgment order, if you get ASMT 10, please file a return. You don't even need to reply to the officer. Officer could reply chayalsina avasaram ledu, but just file a return within 30 days. If you file the return within 30 days, then your order is deemed withdrawn. Your order is deemed withdrawn. You don't need to do anything else. Whatever you have been given, now that is becoming an assessed tax liability that you have to pay. This is one advice that you have to tell all your clients. Whenever they get a notice from the department, whenever they get a letter from the department, they have to share with you. You have to reply within the appropriate time or take action. Under GST, cost of non-compliance is very high rather than cost of compliance. If you have to get this order vacated, you have to file an appeal. You cannot vacate your ASMT 13 automatically. You got to go only for filing an appeal. Now that is even more a costly recourse. Question again is, my turnover was 10 lakhs and liability is 1,80,000. My turnover is 10 lakhs and liability 1,80,000. I did not file a return. What happens when I don't file a return? The officer will serve me a notice under section 46. So GSTR 3A saying that you did not file. So please file the return. It will be served. So I have been served a notice that you have not filed the return. And when they have served a notice, what they have done? They have done a best judgment. They have done a best judgment. So the best judgment is they have issued ASMT 13. ASMT 13 was issued for, let's say, 20 lakhs and 3,60,000 as a tax liability. ASMT 13 is issued for 20 lakhs and 3,60,000 as a tax liability. While in reality, my turnover is 10 lakhs and 1,80,000. Now, why did I not file the returns? I do not have any cash or liquidity or whatever be the reasons. The returns were not filed. After having served an ASMT 13, now please listen this carefully. I have filed a nil return. I have filed a nil return. So within 30 days, I have filed a return, but I have filed a nil return. Now, having filed a nil return, would my order, this ASMT 13, would it get vacated automatically? Is the question. What do you think? Do you think yes, please put it as yes in the chat. If you say no, put it as no in the chat. Was my question clear to you all? Okay, am I audible clearly?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Yes, yes, sir.
Yes. So my question is, I have got ASMT 13 for 10 lakhs and 1,80,000. Sorry, 20 lakhs and 3,60,000, and I have filed my nil returns. So by filing my nil returns, will my section 62 penalties be automatically resolved? So am I saved from section 62? Even though I had a turnover, I have filed a nil return. Is it okay? That's my question to you. You may say yes, no, that's okay. I just want to hear from you guys, what is your view? Okay, members, I would definitely expect a little more participation for a simple reason that, okay, you are out there, you're only listening to me, and I can't even see your faces, whether you're understanding, not understanding. This is the only medium where I ask a question, I exchange that, okay, someone are there out listening. So I got 2 yes. And trusting that the chat is working for all. So because if it's working for some, it would be working for all. Okay. So I am also of the view that if you have filed your return, whether even though nil, that means the best judgment order is vacated. It's a different story that the officer still has a power under 61. So he can go back to 61 and say that, look, basis the information that I have, because even the best judgment order which is passing, is based on the information available to him. Even when you read section the 61 read with rule 99, the 99 gives the officer to scrutinize the written basis the information with him. So the it doesn't mean that the officer lost a chance of not issuing an order. So even then he will still have a powers to question what you have filed. So the only point which I would want to bring to your attention is file a response within 30 days. Otherwise, you will be at risk. This is one key takeaway in section 62, assessment of non-filers read with rule 100. Now, again, same rule talks about assessment of an unregistered person. Assessment of an unregistered person. So here, to whom this section is applicable? This is applicable to a taxable person. Not every person, a taxable person. Who is a taxable person? Someone who is liable to pay tax. So whether registered or not, whether or not registered, but here we are talking about unregistered persons. So we are only talking about unregistered person. So someone who has failed to take a registration or whose registration is cancelled, but he is still liable to pay tax. So registration has been cancelled. So he has cancelled the registration, but is still doing the business. So in such a scenario, the proper officer will do the assessment to best of his judgment, and he will serve the notice under ASMT 14. Again, even here, the order would be he would have 5 years time. He would have 5 years time to issue the final order from the date of annual return. Today, annual return date is very important. In fact, every time when we seek the extension for filing the annual return, we are also indirectly seeking the extension for all these powers the officers have to proceed against us. Both these sections are notwithstanding section 73 and 74. Notwithstanding 73 and 74. Now, the demand is crystallized under 73, 74 has got nothing to do. So these sections have overriding powers than the dates and timelines mentioned. These sections have overriding timelines on the dates which are mentioned under section 73, 74. However, no order can be passed without giving an opportunity of being heard. So the opportunity of being heard is very important under GST. So if any order is passed, an opportunity of being heard has to be given. Otherwise, there are many judicial proceedings, it would become null and void. So just a pictorial summary is, if the officer has a reason to believe that you have not obtained the registration or you have cancelled, then the best judgment order will be passed. So the taxpayer has to reply in ASMT. ASMT 14 would be issued. Within 15 days, you have to reply. And if it is replied, not replied, the officer will take cognizance of that and an order would be passed under ASMT 15. These are the various assessments till the officers that they have. The last one before we get on to the audit is summary assessment. And by the way, summary assessment is again, so like a provisional assessment, it is not a complete assessment. So the summary assessment will be happening only if the proper officer has a reason to believe and he has a evidence showing that the tax liability is going to get escaped. And this is going to happen, summary assessment can happen under the permission of the additional or joint commissioner. So not rank above this can give an authority to the proper officer to go and issue a notice. So only in such a scenario, the summary assessment can happen. However, if the officer believes the person who is carrying the goods or the person in charge of the goods and is, if I don't act now, then I will be losing the money. So even then he will order for summary assessment. So the summary assessment is basically evidencing that the tax payable is there by the person and he cannot at this point make the revenue. There would be a loss to the revenue if I do not take an act. In such a scenario, the summary assessment would be done. Again, we have seen till ASMT 15. So the summary assessment would be passed in in the interest of the revenue. Basically, what is more important is in the interest of revenue. So he wants to protect the revenue interest. So the summary assessment is passed. Now, there could be a situation where that the officer is clear that there is a tax that is getting escaped. Sometimes he doesn't even know to whom to catch. The supplier itself is not known. Then whomsoever is having, the person in charge will be taken. But in all the situations, the officer shall have a sufficient ground to bill him. If I don't act now, then I will be losing. So this guy is taking the flight and going to London, Australia somewhere, and I cannot catch him. So he should definitely have a reason to believe on record, and then he will be acting and issuing ASMT 16. However, if the person to whom the ASMT 16 is issued, if he believes that, okay, it is not right, then he can make an application for withdrawal of such order under ASMT 17. So again, within 30 days from the date of the receipt of the ASMT 16, he can make an application. Acceptance or rejections can be there to the assistant commissioner or joint commissioner, and their communication will be in ASMT 18. However, the sections, all the sections that are leading to is section 73 and 74 for determination of the tax liability. And this is what I think Vinay Gandhi is going to speak tomorrow. A very important two sections. All these sections are going to lead to these two sections, right? So just to summarize our summary assessment, the assessment order will be issued under ASMT 16, ASMT 17 for withdrawal of the order. Either if the order was erroneously drafted or whatever, the rejection, the communication will be done in the section in the ASMT 18. So these are the various sections that we will have to be aware of. That is all on assessments. Before I move to audit, any questions to anyone on assessment? Assessments మీద ఏమైనా questions ఉన్నాయా ఎవరికైనా? All right. You can put your questions in the chat if you have. Otherwise, we can move to audit. Let's go to the next one, which is audit. And this is what most of us today, we are getting a notice from the department, ADT 01. Again, or when you see audits, the form numbers would be titled as ADT. So the audits would be given under ADT 01. Like how there is a definition for assessment 2 subsection 11, there is a definition for audit 2 subsection 30. Let's understand what is an audit. Audit means examination of records, returns, and other documents maintained or furnished by the registered person. Please note, it is maintained or furnished by the registered person. Under this act or the rules made under any other law for the time being in force. So if you are maintaining cost audit records, even that would be called for the scrutiny during the audit. If you are maintaining anything else extra, section 35 of the act gives you 5 items to maintain. And lastly, it says other particulars as prescribed under rule 56. Again, all the devil is in the details. So when you go to rule 56, it gives you more information to be maintained. Now, what is the purpose? Why at all they are doing the audit? The reason, the purpose of the audit is to verify whether you declared a correct turnover, correct taxes, claimed correct refund, availed input tax credit, and other compliance procedure that you have to maintain in the law. That's the purpose of an audit. So if an officer is coming for an audit, this is his intention. Under GST, context is also very much important. No, the context under which the definitions are there are very much important. Like if you notice, there are sections which are defining, as to what it means. Each section has some definitions. But what is very important is in section 2, the starting word is very important, which says, unless the context otherwise requires. Unless the context otherwise requires, this is what I intend to do. So today, if you're reading section 65 and 2 subsection 13, the audit, the context is also very important. And you cannot change these definitions unless the context is otherwise required. For example, the definition of the aggregate turnover under 2 subsection 6, which includes taxable and exempt. Exempt is something else is there. So sometimes if there is an argument, taxable would include exempt, exempt would include non-taxable, all those questions that would come up. So sometimes when you're reading, you got to read them in the context. Unless otherwise the context requires otherwise, this is what the definitions would intend or definitions would mean, is something one should be very careful of. So this is what a definition of audit is. Now, today my purpose is to again get you all refreshed with the basics and geared up with the other discussions that are coming for the litigations. And my only request, given that the schedule has been already given to you, please go through those relevant sections and put up your questions. So make the session interactive. The more the questions you ask, it actually enriches even my knowledge and the other participants' knowledge. There are multiple audits. So there's an audit under 65, which is conducted by the proper officer. And that is what we actually been exposed to. I'm sure each one of you are attending the session here would have faced at least 1 or 2 audits. Even though you're not specialized in the GST, you would have faced this. That is what we are going to discuss a little more in detail now, which is conducted by the tax officer. And sometimes, which is if owing to the complication in the revenue or the valuation, there could also be a special audit where there would be a request done by a CA or a CMA. There was an audit envisaged under 35(5), but right now this has become more like a self-audit. So that is the right now the audits under GST. Let's look at the section 65 audit. So basically, it would be authorized by the commissioner either in the general order or special order, who all can be doing the audit. Again, the relevant notifications have been issued. Of course, there are a couple of challenges which is made in, I believe there is one in Rajasthan High Court and others, where the power to issue the order is by the commissioner, and who is the commissioner is defined, but the circular, if you see, or the notification is signed by again a CBDT officer. So there is a jurisdiction, but I think these are all very much curative in nature and it can be taken off. So at this point, you should only see when a notice is received to you, who is the person who is signing. Go to circular 3, see whether the officer defined there here, the jurisdiction of the authority is same or not. And you should also know the authority, inspector, superintendent, or AC, JC, or all those hierarchy level. Just be aware of it. So because sometimes not below the rank of joint commissioner. So when you hear that, you should know who are the people above the joint commissioner, like additional commissioner, principal commissioner, chief commissioner, all those rankings above, ranking below, you should be aware of. How will the file be taken for the audit? Various states have given the audit manual. In fact, recent audit manual which I have noticed is from the state of Haryana, which has issued a audit manual, and Karnataka was the first state to issue a detailed audit manual. Respective states have issued an audit manual, not for the taxpayers, it is for the assessing officer, the proper officer, how they have to take up the audit or scrutinize for the audit. Now, what could be the basis for the audit? First and foremost, fundamental reasons is when there is a deviations in the ratios, net profit, gross profit ratio, or the supplies to the turnover. All these ratios, when they're not matching, you may ask, how will these ratios not matching? While filing my GST or 3B, where am I giving these ratios? I am not giving these ratios. So unfortunately, you're actually giving these ratios. If you know, when you file your GST or 3B, you are paying tax liability through input tax credit and through cash ledger. Taxes paid divided through cash divided by your gross liability gives you net profit ratio. How will that give my net profit ratio? How is it possible? Of course, when you GST is like a value added tax. Only when you make a value addition, that much profit would be coming. While filing your GST R9, even though it is optional, table 6B, I would always suggest people do a bifurcation between input and input services. Of course, capital goods has been made mandatory from the last financial year audit. Prior to that, it was optional. So anything can be grouped under input goods. Now you might be thinking that, okay, see, I have set up a factory capital unit. So there have been addition to fixed assets. So I will have a huge input tax credit and I will be not paying taxes through cash. But the bifurcation is not done. How will the system know? We have 1.4 crore registered taxpayers. Do we have an officer's size commensurating to audit all the returns? Not possible, right? So how can we make it into system driven, process driven? Give it to a computer to audit you. If an audit is given to a computer to do, it needs to be fed with some parameters. They will say feed with these parameters. How will they know my profit ratio? Let's say I'm into footwear industry. I am making 15%. And someone is into say dealing a provision shop who is making 20%, or someone is into mobile store dealing making around 5%, 6%. So different kind of people, different profit ratios. How will system know? System knows. You are filing table 12 of GSTR1 HSN wise the summary details. Now, basis that it can assess what is your turnover. Okay, I might be a wholesaler or a retailer. Don't worry, even system can make an assessment basis your turnover, your peer ratio. Systems are intelligent enough, way behind what you and I can think and comprehend about the data. Systems have been designed to handle that. So please make sure if there are any deviations in the ratio, it will be cases can be taken for scrutiny. If they're finding a spike, they'll be taking the cases for the scrutiny. If there is an erratic behavior in the ITC or purchases, all this will be taken up for scrutiny. The point which I would like to bring to your attention is generally the scrutiny is taken for the full year. Section 65 audit will be done for the full period. Sometimes it would be combined for multiple years also. 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. The question can come is, after I do an audit for 1 year, can I do audit again? In my view, answer is no. You cannot get at 2 audits for the same period. Can the audit be done by state officer and the center officer? It could be yes. And you can get an audit request from the state or the center, but not both and not parallel. But not both and not parallel. Can there be a section 61 scrutiny notice for 1 period and also section 65 for the same period? Again, the answer is yes. Both are under 2 different sections, 2 different proper officers. Please note the proper officers are different. And more importantly, the context of those are different. So you will get the same tax period, 2 different things. So let's understand certain basics of this departmental audit section 65 read with rule 101. So we have seen rule 99, rule 100 and rule 101. Now, the authority to issue the audit is the commissioner or an officer authorized by him. In most states, all the state officers have given who will be the authority to issue the audit inspection notice. They have already been given. And where can the audit happen? Either at the place of the business or in their office. Of course, by giving a sufficient notice, which is minimum 15 days. And once they start the audit, they got to complete within 3 months. They got to complete within 3 months. If they are unable to complete within 3 months, they can seek for an extension for additional 3 months. So between 3 to 6 months, the audit will be completed. And once the audit is completed, they got to intimate their findings within 30 days. They got to intimate their findings within 30 days. That is your ADT 02. And whatever the liability which is detected, the proceedings would happen under 73, 74. So mere audit observations do not arise to a demand. A demand would always be under 73, 74. I'm sure by now you would have read this 73, 74 at least 10 times. So the more discussion will happen tomorrow. Now let's understand this audit little more detail. So the function is to verify what? Outward supply, inward supply, availment of credit and payment of taxes. This is what will be verified. It could be for a financial year, theoretically speaking, or a part thereof, or multiples thereof. Generally, what we will be having is for the financial year or multiple years, the audit is happening. Okay. And is there a time limit for the audit? I would say the time limit would be there for the audit because the outcome of the audit is a demand that is arising under 73, 74, which has a time limit, either 3 years or 5 years to pass an order. And 3 months before passing an order, they have to issue a notice under 73, and 6 months before passing an order, they have to issue a notice. So which means there is a course of action from the audit. So if you are doing an audit after this time, there is no recovery mechanism. So that is where now the officers would be behind completion of the audit. You might be wishing that, okay, if audit is complete, I'm safeguarded, or 73 is time limit is over. Let's say after August, they will not be issuing any notice. But unfortunately, again, for a department, they don't know what is section 73. They don't even know. They don't even think that something exists. Anything for them, they issue only under 74. This is another problem which we cannot do. And this can be done either at the place of business of registered person or by the proper officer, which we call as the desk review. Both are permitted. Place of business would include the places where the business is ordinarily carried. And it is conducted at principal place of business. Couple of questions is, can you insist as a taxpayer saying that okay, do not come to my premises. I cannot accommodate you. You sit there, I will give you the information. For example, COVID is happening. So all accountants are working from home. I have moved my books of accounts from Tally to some cloud application. Data is maintained in Google Drive. So all this is happening. Do not come. Even if you want to come, you come, no one will be there. So my security guard will be there. He will open the shutter. You can sit and work. How will I give information? You write an email. I will put it into another Google Drive, share you the link. If you want to come, else you don't come, I will give you information. Can we ask this? In my opinion, you cannot insist it, but you can request for a desk review and the officer can oblige it. Next, what happens when the audit report is time barred? Like I have said, within 30 days, the auditor has to give you his observation. What if he is taking 6 months to give his observation? And this 30 days is from the time which is concluded. How will I know when it has concluded? So technically, you will not know when it is concluded. It is 3 months from the date of commencement. When did it commence? Commencement is when you give all the information. So when you are furnishing the information, my suggestion is get the requisition letter, the information that is required, submit, take an acknowledgement to say that you have commenced the audit. Otherwise, I have cases where it is more than a year and the audit is still going on. Today, the officer will issue an audit report and he will request you saying that, okay, please sign this letter stating that you have furnished the information some 20 days, 30 days back, and I have reviewed and concluded. So better be careful on the information. In my view, if the audit report is time barred, it has no teeth in it. Next point is, can the notice which is coming under 73-74 contain points which is not mentioned in the audit report? Suddenly something in light, say the officer has not looked at secondment employment contracts and post the judgment of the Northway under the erstwhile service tax regime, suddenly officer realized that, okay, you also have employees coming from the foreign branch sitting here and working. He chose to add this point suddenly in the notice and give it to you. Is it possible? Again, in my view, officer cannot do it. He has to go through whatever the points that have come under ADT 02, only for those the 73-74 can be initiated. During the course of audit, you will get a list of information that you will be asked to furnish. When you read that, sometimes you will also wonder, నేనే ఇన్ని క్వశ్చన్స్ అడగలేదు ఫైనలైజ్ చేయడానికి, ఇంత ఇన్ఫర్మేషన్ అడుగుతున్నారు మన ఆఫీసర్, వాళ్ళకి అంత జ్యూరిస్ట్రిక్షన్ ఉందా? You might get those doubts. The point is, you can politely reject if you do not have an information and the officer is asking beyond what you are supposed to maintain. You can say, I don't have. If the officer is asking, give me a pivot of the group by and sum by this information, you can politely reject. This is my output tax register, my input tax register. I am giving you Excel file. You do your analysis, whatever you want. Of course, you don't want to get into panga. Papam vaartho enduku manam godabadedi, em adigado chesi chestamu. That is your choice. But you can always politely reject, saying that that information is not available because you are not required to maintain under the law. Next, the ITC eligibility on inputs which are not appearing in GST or 2A. This is the biggest thing which you are seeing in the audit. 16 subsection 4 time limit you have violated. You have availed credits which are not there in 2A. These are the two main things you will find in your ADT 02. Mere finding an observation, does it call for a demand? In my view, again, answer is no. By the way, 36 sub rule 4 got introduced only in October 2019. 9th October 2019 is when they have formed it. And in that month, they said then initially 20%, 10%, 5%, and 0. Or 16 subsection 2 clause double A got notified only from 1st January 2022. Prior to this, this was not there. The concept of 2A was released only in 2018 mid after September. Till then, the 2A was not operational because the GSTN was also waiting. Let me do GSTR 1, 2, 3, make it live. Then the new ANX one, all those concepts were there in the midst of that. 2A itself came late. 17, 18, 2A itself was not there. Today, if you say, if you attend any session, they say, okay, please watch 2A, 2B, take the credit. 4 years back, 5 years back, they say, if you are fulfilling section 16, subsection 2 conditions, please avail the credits. That would be the statement. Having said that, the same consultant who gave an opinion, then will he holds good with that? I would say yes. You will get a discrepancy because it's there in the checklist of the officers that if it is not there, raise a demand. Now, raising a demand doesn't mean that you have an obligation to pay. You can always contest. And this is the next biggest litigation which we will be awaiting for some judgment of the Supreme Court, because high courts, some high courts would be in favor of SSC, some high courts in favor of the revenue, but it got to be get settled, or eventually the litigations will mount up and we'll be waiting from one Sabka Vishwas or Samkar Samadhan waiver scheme. In fact, in the state of Andhra, I believe you are looking at some VAT relief. By honestly, I would say these kind of things should be brought in to weed out old things. People may say that is being benefiting to the litigant SSCs. Now, I would say that an SSC feels no liability, no liability. It is not that the support is being given to errant taxpayers, taxpayers who have a reason to believe there is no liability arising. So these schemes would be beneficial. So this is the notice that is coming. In my view, shouldn't be looked at. Sometimes the officer says that, okay, you do a reconciliation and give 2A versus 3B, reconcile that and give it to me. Are you under an obligation to reconcile and give? In my opinion, no. Let's take a scenario where I have availed an input tax credit of rupees 100, while rupees 120 was there in 2A. Now, some of it I might have not availed. Those which I have availed might not be there in 2A. It could be multiple scenarios. Could be multiple scenarios. The question that would come up is, officer is asking you to reconcile and give. In my opinion, you can always say, look, this is my input tax credit register, totaling so much for the year is 100. April I have availed so much, May I have availed. You can give a submission. 3B is a consolidated document. I was supposed to maintain my workings of the input tax credit availed. This is my input tax credit availed. As an SSC, what you have is your books of accounts. Books of accounts is your internal. You can choose to avail credit in whichever the month it is. In my books, I would have recorded it in April, but I have availed it in the month of July, possible. Or I would have done a data entry error. While my purchase value was 100 and a credit of 18, I have only taken 15. There was an error. Accountant has done an error. Anything is possible. But as long as you say this is my input tax credit register, matching it with your 3B. Should it be matched month over month? Again, answer is no. It is for a tax period where the audit is being conducted. For that period, you summarize and give. So I thought these are the important points that we should have a discussion, because the ADT 01s that are coming regularly. Now, there is an audit manuals that have been issued, which talking about the criteria for selecting or what are the steps that have to be taken. All that I want you to get that this is binding on the GST authorities and not for you. And there is also a manual which talks about the criteria without risk evaluation, and it's like taxpayers is categorized into ABCD, whatever the thing. Next, the audit findings, please note, very important. The audit findings have to be placed in their internal meetings, and the DC will say, yes, these are the fit findings. You can go ahead and issue the audit report. So are we privy to it? In my view, no. But all the audit observations goes to the higher authorities before ADT 02 comes. If you look at the audit manuals, they have checklist. Like our ICI, we have all the audit standards like stat audit or bank audit or GST audit. The book which has been given, it has a huge checklist. Now, sometimes people will ask, when will I get time to fill this? Is it practical to do all the cases? Likewise, department also has given a checklist with an annexure 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 standard checklist. And very easily, the officers will send an email. Here is the audit. Here is the information required. Please fill this checklist and give, including your name, your GST ID, the period for the audit, all values that you reported in 3B, value reported in 1, ITCFL, all the information will be asked, everything blank, asking you to fill. Should you fill this checklist? In my opinion, you have no obligation to fulfill this checklist. You can politely refuse, sir, I do not have sufficient manpower to do this additional work. Here is my input tax register, output tax liability. The GSTR 13B filed is available in your good system, but however, I can share you the copies of 1 and 3B file. He will ask you furnish the details that you have considered filing 3B. You might have it, you might not have it. You can say, this is my input tax credit register and output liability. Now, if there is a difference month over month, interest can be computed and paid. You don't need to match it month over month and give. This is one important point I thought I will highlight it. So once the audit is started, it has to be completed. It cannot be endless. It is very time bound. So the audit will be completed within 3 months. And of course, additional 3 months can be taken. And 3 months from when? From the date of commencement. From the date of commencement. So knowing the date of commencement is also very important, which means the date on which all the information which has been asked is made available. So making the information available is very important to say that the audit has commenced. The audit has commenced. That is very important. Once the audit is completed, within 30 days of completion, he has to give ADT 02. Now, in between, he will give you multiple letters, multiple emails, multiple correspondence. Nothing of that means it is a final observations. He will ask you your replies to the audit reasonings. Nothing of that is conclusions. The conclusion means you have ADT 02 in your hand, ADT 01 and ADT 02. So further to it, if the audit results in detection of tax short paid, not paid, erroneous refund, or input tax credit wrongly availed, then a show cause notice would be issued under section 73 DRC 01. Sometimes the DRC 01A pre-show consult, earlier we had in the service tax the pre-consultation notice. So DRC 01A can also be issued. Not mandatory that it has to be issued in all the situations, but DRC 01 is the start of any of the procedures that would happen under the audit. So friends, these are the overview of what happens in section 65 audit. Let me just sum up for you. So the auditee will be chosen basis various risk parameters which they have identified, and ADT 0 will be one issued, and the audit will commence at the premises of the taxpayer, or it could be a desk audit. We will be giving all the information within 3 months. He will complete. ADT 01 is the information which they are seeking in, and after we submit the response, ideally it is ADT 01B. The conclusion will happen in ADT 02 within 30 days, and the post that the notice for recovery and anything may come up under section 73 or 74. What is the time limit for it? Is those timelines which I have mentioned. That is the time limit under which it would be issued. So this is all about your GST section 65 GST audit ADT 01 and 02. Any questions to anyone at this point? Anyone have any questions to ask? So we have seen the audit in general. Let us move to special audit. Quickly, we will wrap up the special audit before we conclude the session. So let me just. So even before special audit, some points I want you to be aware. I want you to be aware while responding to the aspects of the notice is so whenever a notice comes, firstly, you always check whether the authority is empowered to issue it or not. Parallel audits and investigations are going on the same subject. You can say that, okay, there is a section 67 inquiry which is happening here, and you can keep this under abeyance till that point. Always submit the documents under a covering letter, and always check for the limitation. I said 3 months, 6 months within time that has to go. Thoroughly vet the documents before you submit. Sometimes you will be encountering a situation where that everything is prepared by a junior, some information is missing or some summary is wrong. Thoroughly vet the documents before you submit the information for audit. Please do it. Audit is issued point by point. When you are making a reply, please pick the issue mentioned in the audit report. Make the submission in specific to each of it. Keep all the communication with the officer in writing. If you are giving something in some document submitted, prepare a covering letter, get it in writing. Whenever you are explaining any differences, get your GSTR 1, 2A, 3B, everything under the factual backing of it. Please keep it. Do not at all come under pressure and deposit any money. There is no necessity. If you have a reason to believe what you have done is right, what you have done is right. So there is nothing to come under pressure. Immediately they will say that, hey, look, you have treated this as exempt supply, so it is taxable at 12%. Your turnover was 10 crores, so 1.2 crore is a tax liability escaping. If you don't pay, I will invoke section 132 and I will do including arrest procedures, all those things will be thrown on the card. In fact, the moment an officer is talking about that, which means he knows that he is putting under pressure, because nothing of those sections can be invoked unless you have not disclosed. So this is only situations where you have suppressed, but here you have disclosed at this rate. It is a difference of opinion. So please be aware. Check all the procedures where the audit department is supposed to follow, whether they have followed it or not. Please check that before you make any response. So this is something which you should be very careful before you make any reply or before you read a notice. So let's look at the special audit. The last thing in the audit is special audit. Basically, this is kind of a scrutiny, little detail, where the officer is of the opinion that okay, the values that you have disclosed is not correct, input tax credit is beyond the normal limit, and he is not capable to make this assessment. So he will recommend for a special audit. Please note, special audit will be not taken without an approval of commissioner, because it involves a cost where the department pays to the chartered accountants or the cost accountants. In fact, there will be an empanelment for the special audits that would happen. So ADT 03 is the audit intimation. ADT 04 is the report of the audit intimation. So these are the various information, various things that would be looking at. And once the audit report is issued, whether it is ADT 2 or ADT 4, if you are agreeing, you are okay that you can pay through DRC 03. Otherwise, the DRC, the procedures would follow. DRC 01A, you will make a reply. If the officer agrees, it gets concluded, or again, any notice, all those things would come up. Broadly, these are the various points one should be aware of. And that's all on the audit and assessments. So with this, we have come to end of my deliberations. And if you have any questions and answers, I'm free to take those questions. So thank you all. And I should thank Guntur Branch, Bhargavi Madam, and the office bearers for giving an opportunity to share some of my views on the audit and assessments. So over to you, ma'am, and participants, feel free to ask questions that you have, and we can discuss any of the questions. Either you can put it in the chat or you can ask it here.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. That was such a nice and chala lucid ga cheptunnaru, sir.
Good. Thank you.
So
there's one question which I see Ajay Agarwal is asking. Annual return for 2019-20 is not filed. Course of action as a late fee is 1,03,000. So Ajay, the annual return, now let me give you two answers. One, a chartered accountant as a compliance thing, what we have to do is you have a late fee which is calculated per day, but the maximum late fee is 0.25% of the turnover. So there is a cap on the maximum late fee that will happen. See, another thing that can also happen is, okay, an annual return is something that needs to be filed. I have not filed. Annual return is, okay, I'm now giving you a lawyer who argues, I will not file. What will happen? You will have to do assessment. Okay, you continue doing your assessment. You do ADT 05, ADT 01, you do audit. So they would day, but the penalty to pay is in the table 19 of GSTR 9. Only when I file it will come. So I will choose not to file. Let's see how, under which section they will levy the penalty. Under 73 is an argument I have heard in some of the places, which I wouldn't recommend. The GSTR 9 to be filed, it has to be filed. The late fee has a cap of the turnover limit. So hence, not necessary all the times the late fee will be so much. That's one point one should be careful of. Then there's a question, throw some light on recent notification regarding adjudication by the jurisdictional officer with respect to the findings of the officer. Again, today, the officer who is doing the ADT 02, he himself is adjudicating and issuing a demand. So the question that has come up is, does the same officer who is assessing, does he have the powers to adjudicate? This matter is being taken up and it is not conclusive. Going by the circular 3, by the hierarchy and the ranking, if I am an assistant commissioner and I have conducted for the audit, and the power to issue under 73 is also having the officer under assistant commissioner, the adjudication is also done by the same officer. This matter is being examined further, so the guidelines would come up. But as of now, generally in the center, I have noticed the audit officer is forwards the files to the proper officer. Proper officer, without taking cognizance of your reply, you would have given reply to each of the points without even considering anything. Section ADT 02 title is changed and notice is issued saying that why a penalty cannot be invoked under 73 or 74, and the notice is being served. So you can copy the same reply to ADT 02 to this and submit back. So the center generally makes having a different adjudicating officer, but I would believe this matter was sustained if the assistant commissioner is doing the audit and he will also do adjudicating. But the demand order would be passed by the different officer is what I would believe. For 9C in section 65, they are levying late fee, whether it is justified. Venkatesh sir, the late fees is only mentioned for 9 and not 9C. There is another school of thought, 9C, wherever the 9C is applicable, 9 is incomplete without 9C. But I would believe they could recommend for a penalty, a general penalty, and not a late fee for 9C. However, an audit officer has no power to recover any money. He can only give his audit observations, but he cannot recover any money.
Sir, namaste.
Yes, sir. Namaste, sir.
This is Bharadwaj, sir, chartered accountant.
Yes, sir.
Sir, na question ఏంటంటే assistant commissioner ki mana query submission ఇచ్చిన తర్వాత ఇంత టైం లిమిట్ లోపు వాళ్ళు మనని మళ్ళీ కాల్ ఫర్ చేయాలని ఏమి టైం లిమిట్ ఏం లేదా?
సో ఆడిట్ స్టార్ట్ అయిన 3 months లోపల ఆడిట్ కంప్లీట్ చేయాలి.
ఆడిట్ కంప్లీట్ అయిపోయింది
అయిన 30 days లోపల he has to give you the ADT 02. ఇవ్వలేదు 3 months తర్వాత 6 months తర్వాత ADT 02 ఇస్తే నా ప్రకారం it is not valid in the law. You can properly reply the audit completed on this time. ADT 02 should have been issued. You have not issued within the time. So this is an invalid audit report. It's like there is a due date to complete my statutory audit. AGM conduct chesin tarvata kuda audit report issue chestadi. What will the members discuss in the AGM when they don't even have audit report? Idi alane. So time limit అయిపోయింది తర్వాత ఎప్పుడుకో audit report isse, there is no purpose to it. So you can always say, that is why I always say in your submissions take the acknowledgement. Those submissions are very much important. 3 months lopala complete cheyali, 30 days lopala report issue cheyali.
Sir, what if it is not completed within 3 months, sir?
I think that audit is completed.
Okay, because we have been receiving
వస్తూనే ఉంటుంది.
yes, for the past 2 years, sir. For the past 2 years.
In a smart way, the officers are taking a finally that you have submitted the information only some 20 days back. Because 3 months time limit has a one mischief. The time limit 3 months starts from the commencement of the audit to the completion is 3 months. The commencement happens when you submit all the information. So it is very important that you establish that you have submitted the information required for the first notice. Subsequent notice informations doesn't mean that commencement not happen. See, after you submitted only, he is giving you more information, which means commencement has already happened. So that's very, very important that you make the audit commence 3 months from the commencement.
That means if we have not say, for example, if they have asked for some 8 points of information, we have submitted only 6, and for the remaining 2, we have requested for time. And
so officer can say that till the other 2 has come, I have not commenced the audit.
sir, what is happening is after 8 points, they are asking another 4 points.
So in the first letter is what the commencement. Further, how many ever information they have asked, it doesn't, even if you have not submitted, they can make a deemed assessment conclusion. You can only say, they can say that this information is not available, whatever, but they have commenced the audit.
So you mean if the audit is not completed within 3 months, if they concludes after 1 year or 2 years, whatever the demand they have raised is not valid?
It is not valid. So your reply has to be very simple, saying that the audit itself is not valid, the basis of demand created is not valid. So I choose not to respond to any of the questions. So again, the burden is of proof is on them to prove that why it is valid.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
సార్ ఇప్పుడు డిమాండ్ రైజ్ చేసిన తర్వాత మనం మళ్ళీ సబ్మిట్ చేసాం, ఈ డిమాండ్ రైజ్ చేశారు బట్ ఈ పాయింట్స్ కింద ఇది వ్యాలిడ్ కాదని చెప్పి మనం రిప్లై సబ్మిట్ చేసాం. చేసిన రిప్లైకి జనవరిలో సబ్మిట్ చేస్తే ఇవాళ దాకా మళ్ళీ వాళ్ళ నుంచి రెస్పాన్సే లేదు. మరి మనం ఏమనుకోవాలి? మనం చెప్పింది వాడు ఒప్పుకున్నాడు అనుకోవాలా, లేదంటే టైం లిమిట్ ఉందనుకోవాలా?
లేదు. అగైన్ DRC 73-74 has a time limit. There is a procedure. That is what tomorrow Vinay Gandhi will also take. But answering your question, they have to complete within the time limits. So 73, 3 years from the end of the thing. So appati varaku meer wait cheyali. So
3 years.
Order ki mee notice ku 3 months gap undali. So every time when you get a DRC 01, okkati chuskondi 73 section 73 lo vachinda, 75 lo vachinda. 75 lo they will have 5 years time limit. Our time limit అయిపోయింది అంటే nothing can they can do.
సో బ్యాంక్ అటాచ్మెంట్ కూడా అప్పుడు దాకా ఇవ్వడు, అంతేగా? ఆ తర్వాత బ్యాంక్ అటాచ్మెంట్
వచ్చిన 3 months తర్వాత బ్యాంక్ అటాచ్మెంట్ వస్తుంది.
రాలేదు సార్, ఇప్పుడు దాకా రాలే.
So recovery again, your 83 and other thing should start. Demand received 3 months you did not pay, then the attachment of the bank will happen.
అది జరగలేదు. మనం ఇచ్చిన రిప్లై కోసం మనం ఇచ్చిన దాంతో వెయిట్ చేసి కూర్చున్నాడు, మరి దాన్ని ఆగాడు అనుకోవాలా?
So he is also looking at the positives and negatives of it. So you can, unless you get a demand, so make sure that emails are on the portal. First 2 years it was not uploaded to the portal, but now demands are getting uploaded on the portal. Again, the serving of the notice is also very important. Me chetiki demand eppudu vachindho. Again, litigation people are in the practice. If you will get it through postal acknowledgement, seal acknowledgement, scan cheskoni pettukondi. That's a very important. Like for service tax, with the limitation of order, 30th April they should have issued the service tax, the final notice. Like under GST, completion of order was given. Under service tax, serving of the notice was the time limit. So if the notice was served to you on 2nd May, 5th May, that is a proof saying that it is time bound. So likewise, even getting the scan copy of those postal letters, if it is speed post, you can enter on the speed post. You can take a screenshot when they have dispatched. They would have dated it on previous date, but they have dispatched. That is also, all those things matter. When it is reaching me is the date of communication. That is what is very important.
Okay. సో ఐదర్ వే మనం ఇచ్చిన రిప్లైకి వాడు రిప్లై ఇవ్వలేదు కాబట్టి 3 years అనేది టైం అయితే ఉంది. మనం అప్పుడు దాకా మనం ఫైనల్ తీసుకోవాలి, క్లోజ్ చేసినట్టు.
అవును ఖచ్చితంగా.
ఓకే సార్.
ఇన్ఫాక్ట్ జిఎస్టీ లో రివిజన్ అథారిటీ అనేది ఒకటి ఉంది. సో దట్ ఈస్ లిటిల్ హైయర్ లెవెల్. ఈవెన్ 73 లో నోటీస్ వచ్చి డిమాండ్ వచ్చిన తర్వాత అపీల్కి వెళ్ళి క్లోజ్ అయినాక కూడా ఛాన్స్ ఆఫ్ రివిజన్ అథారిటీ కమింగ్ అప్. బట్ మీకు ఏ డిమాండ్ రాలేదంటే there cannot be any revision because there is no order, so nothing can be revised. So no notice, they cannot go back to the time limits which have given.
ఇనిషియల్ గా ADT 02 ఇచ్చాడు
అంతే. తర్వాత 7 మీకు DRC 07 వచ్చిందా, DRC 01 వచ్చిందా, అది ఇంపార్టెంట్.
ఆ వచ్చిన డిఆర్సి బట్టి మనం ఇంకా టైం లిమిట్ లెక్కేసుకోవాలంటారు సార్, అదే మీరు చెప్పేది.
Correct. So
Okay.
order is DRC 07. So
Okay.
DRC 7 ఎప్పుడు వచ్చింది అన్నది చూసుకోవాలి మనం.
అక్కడి నుంచి టైం లిమిట్ లెక్కేసుకోవాలి.
అవును.
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్, థ్యాంక్ యూ.
So there is another question in the chat box.
Notice is received for verification of shipping bills for okay, this is your merchant trading, but when we are submitting they are denying, saying that we would not accept. But Ajay, I would only state that, see, when you would have claimed either a refund or they want to prove you that the person to whom you have supplied, he has made a further submit. So the procedures which have been given also stated that 6 months time limit for further export should have happened. So those shipping bills copy, you have to also collect it and keep it for your record. Now if the officer is denying, that is his choice. So he has asked you, you have submitted the further, if he is creating a demand, the onus of proving any demand is always officer. One thing you should know under GST, section 155 of the act talks about who has to prove. The proving, in case if it is input tax credit availed, the SSE has to prove that it is valid input tax credit. Leaving that, any liabilities which are getting created, the onus of proving that is on the assessing officer and not on the taxpayer. So Ajay, in your case, you don't need to prove. So it is officer who has to prove that this is not eligible. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, sir. Dear members, any more questions? So I think that's all, sir. I'm very thankful to you, sir. Chala chakkaga chepparu, and all our members are continuously listening to you. And thank you so much, sir. We wish to have you personally, physically in Guntur, sir.
Sure. Thank you so much, and love to be in person and attend the session. Thank you for inviting me. Thank you, members.
Thank you, members. Thank you.